I wanted to start off our interview today by asking you to speak a little bit about your professional background in public relations. Perhaps tell us how you got started in the industry.
I was an English major at college and didn't follow the Barnard path, which was generally to go for an advanced degree and into teaching. And at that time, decided I wanted to go into business. And I had various and sundry jobs to start with, writing, copywriting, little lightweight public relations for little companies you never would have heard of. And then I dropped out to have 2 children. And as a result of a rather extraordinary set of coincidences, I ended up answering a little ad in a newspaper which set me on the path of ultimately handling all the public relations for Earth Day in the entire Northeast area, which was a gigantic, as I say, accident in a sense. From that, a year later, I served on the Mayor's Council of the Environment for New York, and I met someone who was connected with the New York Times, and she asked me just before the first anniversary of Earth Day to write a supplement for the New York Times that they could run on its anniversary. And I was very young and stupid at the time, very young, very dumb, very naive, and so I did. I didn't at the time know anything about hiring staff or what have you. My husband was a commercial artist. He did all the artwork. I did all the copy. And it ran. And as a result, there were only 2 names on the masthead, my husband and myself. And that came to the attention of the president of AT&T, who hired me as an environmentalist. And I worked in the environmental area of AT&T for a couple of years before ultimately being transferred into public relations. I started as far from the center of power as you could get in a company of that size. And I don't think anybody would have predicted, not friend, not foe, not me, that I would have ended up as an executive vice president. It was just an astounding journey. But the most important reason, I think, for that journey was when I entered. At that time there were 1 million people in the Bell system. It was just before the breakup of the telephone system. And everyone had a well-defined job. The place ran like a Swiss clock, except they didn't have an environmentalist. And I came in as the one and only environmentalist. And so I never learned to obey the rules. And I never learned to fit in a box. And I never learned how the hierarchy determines what you're supposed to do and how you're not supposed to make waves. I was brought in to make waves. And so I had a rather odd career without formal public relations training. But it worked.
Do you feel that there is a corollary between public relations and social advocacy?
I think there very often is, because I think the heart of public relations, as I've used to define it in the very early years when I was at AT&T and didn't know anything about Arthur Page or anybody else, I used to define it as trying to bring into harmony the policies and the actions of a company and the expectations of its publics. Mm-hmm. And so the person who's on point trying to help the company do that has to, on the one hand, really understand the business, its actions, and what will make it succeed. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, has to be an advocate for what the public expects and how to adapt and bend those things so that they fit together, because if they don't fit together, it's a disaster. And you can try to change public expectations. It doesn't work very often. You can try through advocacy outside, and you can try to change policies inside by advocating for public needs. But you ultimately have to bring them into balance, because if you don't, the place goes up in flames, and then you have what we call crisis, and then you need to be trained in crisis management. So, yeah, I think social advocacy is terrific training for public relations, because if you can be involved in something and see what it takes to move a lot of people, to learn how to touch them both rationally and emotionally, I think that'll stand you in good stead no matter what kind of institution you work for in terms of trying to do public relations.